camera.
Okay, I'll give you a moment. Let's go to Waithera.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So happy to be here, and I hope my background noise is not too much. I found myself somewhere, and then I couldn't get to a quiet place in time, but I said I'll just, wing it wherever I am. But really happy to be here. It's actually my first time being here. I am head of media futures at EABL. I also just recently joined the MSK Council as a corporate representative on behalf of EABL. I also am an independent executive director at Galana Oil, one of the oil marketing companies. And I am a Rotarian. I am the proud PR director for Rotary Club of Lavington Gioni. So if there are any Rotarians here, please acknowledge we love sharing our passion of Rotary Club. And I'm also a founder of the Second Chances Foundation, which is a cancer advocacy foundation. So those are the many hats I wear. Personally, I am a mom and a wife of 3 kids. Today is actually my son's 22nd birthday, my first one. So it's a special day, the day I became a mother. So happy to be here.
Wow, thanks, Waithera. And when you were speaking, I was like, you go, girl, yeah? When you were just dropping those titles, like, so impressive. Brian, please introduce yourself. And before you do that, let me just read out a few people who are on the other side. We have Anne Kamau. She's a brand strategist at Impulse Promotions. We have Catherine Buru. She's really excited to be here. She's in business development. Who else is here? We have Joe Harvey. He's the BD manager at Kenya. We have Birungi, head of marketing, Cairo Bank in Uganda. Paul, you have people from Uganda here. We have Christine from Kenya Power. Just introduce yourself to everyone, and let's hear from Brian.
Hi guys, my name is Brian. It's Koira, not Korea.
Koira. Oh, look at that.
Koira. Yeah. So I work at Oxygen. Oxygen is an integrated agency where we offer a variety of clients services such as PR, which is the main business, but also digital advertising and creative. I've been pleased to work on a number of accounts in the last 7 years across banking, telco, Diageo. Waithera here is actually my client. This is actually my first time being on this panel, so I'm excited to learn as well.
Cool. Paul?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Naomi. My name is Paul Muriongi. I'm the team leader at Capital One Group. We are a marketing communications firm offering services in PR, digital, creative design, as well as online social care. I'm trained by the Chartered Institute of Marketing and also by the Chartered Institute of PR. So I've got both legs in 2 different fields. I love talking and sharing about brands, having advised, I think, over 80 now so far, in a career spanning about 13 years so far. Happy to be here and looking forward to interact with you all.
Great, such a breadth of experience. Matilda, we'll just go with you with your audio. Please introduce yourself.
All right, cool, great. I guess it's good to know that I'm not the only newbie here. So this is my first time. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be in the presence of great marketers to learn and share ideas. My journey with marketing has actually been pretty interesting. I actually graduated with a degree in finance, but all my career I have been practicing in marketing, but I've also been trained by CIM, and I actually sit on the board of CIM Kenya. And the reason why I love marketing is because I love good stories, and I feel like they are actually intertwined. It's about deeply connecting with that audience and shaping people's perceptions about products, brands, cultures. And I believe great marketers are also great storytellers. So from a work perspective, I have over 12 years working experience in the technology space, having worked at Airtel, MasterCard, and currently working at Telkom Kenya. And I've had the privilege of working in the different arms of marketing, from heading acquisition, driving usage and retention, managing brand and communication. And that journey has given me a good view of how to commercialize businesses, which is what I'm currently doing at Telkom. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to learning from this experience. And I join with a caveat that all the views expressed on this webinar are solely mine based on my marketing career and do not in any way reflect the views of my employer, Telkom Kenya. So thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Matilda. And I don't know if you have a legal background there, but I guess the same applies for most, if not all of us. Like Victor said, our objective today is just to recap and reflect on what's been happening in the marketing and in the marketing space in Africa. I think we have people from different parts. I saw someone from Uganda, South Africa. So we'll talk about Africa in general, and not, I know a majority of us are Kenyan, but we'll try and give it an African perspective. And we hope to make it really worth your hour if you're listening to us today. So if you have questions, just drop them, like I said, on the chat, and Irene and I will work on getting them answered. And also, as we even start off, what has stood out for you? And please write on that on the chat. What's one campaign or something that you've seen or interacted with and like, that really caught my eye this past year? Would like to talk about that. So write that in the chat, yeah? So let's get started. Before I ask all the hard questions, I'm just gonna throw a random question out there to you, Brian, and actually to all of us. For Christmas, for you, is it Shags or is it Costo? Costo is Mombasa. Where is Christmas?
No, definitely Shags.
Yeah.
I think it's the only time I get to, most of my clients go on holiday, so that means I also go on holiday. So that's the only time I get to go in Shags and just for 3 weeks not touch my laptop. So Shags, definitely.
Yeah. I guess it's such a Kenyan thing to do. It's one of those two choices. Why there are Shags or Costo?
Well, I try and do the best of both worlds. So we usually go to the coast mid-December, come back on the 23rd. Then because my husband's such a Shags guy, not in a bad way, he loves the village. So we go to the village, we go to Shags on 23rd. So we do both. So it's a compromise we've come to over the years.
Okay. Yeah. Matilda, Shags, Costo?
I think it depends. We change locations, but I think for me the biggest thing is that I always spend it with my family. So as long as we're together, we could be going to coast together, we could decide to go to the village together, we could decide to go bump at my mom's. It's really, it changes from time to time, but Christmas is always family time. Yeah.
Cool. I guess for Paul, you wanna go?
I think similar to Matilda's, where the family is, that's where I am.
Yeah.
But normally spend it with my family, as well as also trying to see my dad and my mom and my sisters as well, since I don't see them the whole year round. Yeah.
Cool. I guess we'll get to the hard questions, but I want Irene to start us off with those really, really tough questions. Over to you, Irene.
I thought you were going to ask me whether it's Shags or Costo for me.
No, for you, I just spared you because I don't even, when was the last time you were home? I'll call it home for you, but I know you're not in Kenya, so I'll just spare you. Maybe we should ask people who are tuned in, yeah? Are you a Shags person? I think if you ask me, you're authentically Kenyan if you go to Shags for Christmas, yeah? If you don't go to Shags for Christmas, maybe you're not so Kenyan.
No, I feel like I like the best of both worlds. So I'll do Shags and then Costo.
Okay,
right? I'm a Kenyan like that. Anyway, let's get into it. And just to set context, there's so much that's been happening in the past quarter. So there's been a lot to talk about, right? When we were coming up with questions, it was so much excitement because there's so much to talk about. But I just want to bring something into perspective that's been going on globally. So I know most of you have been exposed to the BLM movement. That's the Black Lives Matter. And last year, that was a big thing. And I still think it is. But the interesting twist was brands had to now start taking a stance, right? Where do they stand when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement? Where do they stand on social issues? So for once, brands could not take the back end and say, you know what, we are here to do our work, and anything else happening societally has nothing to do with us. So we've come to a point where, as marketers, as brands, we need to take a stance on something that's happening in our society. Because we cannot remove ourselves from the ecosystem where we belong, where our customers are, where our people are. So I just want to start with you, Waidera, and I just want to talk about what's your opinion on brands aligning to a social issue?
So like you said, I think we're living in a time when, because these are cultural issues, brands cannot separate themselves from these issues. So they need to take, it's almost a progressive approach. At ABL and the wider Diageo, a part of our inclusivity and diversity policy is all about that. So in different markets around the world, so in the US, I know Diageo has gone on to support the Black Lives Matters campaign or movement. And it looks different all around the world. But again, it's part and parcel of our culture. And it's about, for a brand, are you going to show cultural leadership and take on these issues? Or are you going to remain silent? So as Diageo/ABL, we know we are not going to remain silent on issues that matter to us. In particular, just closer to home, EABL, East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. For us, it's more about progressive portrayal of women, of genders, not just women, progressive portrayal of genders in media and advertising. So we're going to be announcing really soon what we're going to be doing around our investment, our media investment from a progressive point of view, because we want to be in progressive media environments, we want to make sure we have creative excellence that shows that's really representative of who we are as a society. Yeah.
I really love what you just said, and I want to bring out something still remaining with you, Waidera. There's something about, and I don't want to say KOT because I don't want to be attacked on Twitter, but I want to say a lot of us, when we see something happening, out there, we run to the brand and say, do something about it. And I feel like there is probably not an understanding that a brand cannot be aligned with every social issue. They pick something because it's aligned to their values, right? So there's that aspect. So I want to bring in the authenticity, the issue of authenticity when you're picking what cause or what you as a brand decide to advocate for. What are those things that marketers or corporates or basically companies need to be looking out for when they're choosing what to align themselves to in order to remain authentic? We don't want, I'm not saying that a brand cannot have more than one cause, but I'm also saying, how does authenticity play into this?
Well, first things first, if you as a brand do not know what you stand for, then you'll be all over the place. So first identify what you stand for and what is your positioning. So again, the EABL example is we have a corporate brand, which is EABL, and in the various countries, it's KBL, SBL, UBL. And that's a corporate brand is also different from the product brands. Then all the other brands, so we have a portfolio of over 40 brands, from Bear Lager in Uganda to Tusker Lager in Kenya to Serengeti Lager in Tanzania. They all have their brand positioning and they all know what they stand for. So again, if you don't know what you stand for, you'll be all over the place, right? So let's first start there. What do you stand for? And it's just like you as an individual. I think about myself. There's things I, as an individual, I advocate for. I advocate for education, I advocate for health. I'm a cancer survivor, so I'm big passionate about cancer advocacy. Now, when there are conversations going on Twitter about other issues, first of all, I'm like, okay, it's not that I don't care about them, but I know what I'm advocating for. I know what I'm passionate about. So I direct my energy to that. So as brands, we cannot be all over the place. Where can you have the most impact? Decide what it is, and then and move on with that.
Man, perfectly put, hey? Decide on where you can make the most impact and go for that. Naomi, can you top that?
Yeah, sorry, Irina, I was muted. Yeah, I like that. And I was wondering whether Paul or anyone else has an opinion on that. What do you think, or Brian or Matilda? What are your opinions on brands aligning to social issues, or when you see, based on just what we've seen this past quarter?
Okay, so I think brands should align to social issues in two instances. And this is from a corporate communications point of view, looking at the fact that their reputation is going to be at stake. So number one, if it matters to your stakeholders, and this is from your customers to your key clients, to your employees, to your supply chain. If that social issue matters to your stakeholders, I think you need to have a stand. Whether positive or negative, you need to have a stand. The second one is if it affects your bottom line, or if it affects the industry that you're in, you also do need to take a stand. And so basically, brands should be very strategic when coming out and talking about a certain social issue, because at times it's not also about just standing up and talking about something. People will ask, okay, so what's the connection? So for me, it's basically those two things. If it matters and affects your stakeholders, and then secondly, if it will affect your bottom line or your industry, then you should stand up and take a stand.
Yeah, Birinji, I don't know if he's Uganda, it's Birinji. If he's Kenyan, it's Biringi, says you all need to align in your strategic objective. So yeah, keen to hear what other people think. Brian, do you have thoughts?
Maybe just to echo what Paul said, and even right there, in terms of social issues, it's something that we can't get away from. We live in a progressive society where people now, unless we start caring about what our audiences care about, I think we're not going to be doing so well. So
yeah,
so the first thing, it's purpose and caring about what our audiences care about. So if we don't do that, I think we're going to start losing audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. My other question is actually directed to you, Brian. This other quarter, what we saw was this issue around brand ambassadors and influencers. And without going into too much detail, there was, in Kenya, we had about Naomi Campbell, Lupita Nyong'o. There was that whole conversation. Before we get into details on your thoughts around that, what is the difference between an influencer and an ambassador? Are they the same thing? Yeah.
I would answer your question in two ways. Because at every stage in life that we're in, we have an influencer. There's someone we aspire to be, or something that we look at and think, I should be at that stage of my life. But in terms of influencers and how we've seen that grow over the last maybe decade, we've come from an area where celebrities were influencers. Then now that has continually changed as we have more content platforms like TikTok where people can share anything and even the pandemic accelerated content creation. So now we're looking into a society where we're looking for more authenticity, the age of realism, if I can call it that. What you're talking about right now about societal issues. So we are looking now into, I would not call them ambassadors, I would look at calling them advocates. And I think that's where we are heading as an influencer industry, because these guys now have an area where they can speak to you with authority, with authenticity, with values. And that goes towards creating meaningful connections between the brand and the audience. And I think it's come to a time where we need to stop looking at influencers as channels, but as partners. And I think Waidera will echo me in terms of creating more long-term relationships with influencers has more value than short-term sort of campaigns, because then the audience starts creating that correlation between the brand and the influencer, because then the audiences that you're talking to are creating that buy-in. So I think even for us as marketers and as brands, we need to start looking at creating long-term relationships with these influencers.
Yeah, yeah. Katia is saying that she supports that move of shifting it to a partnership as opposed to sort of ambassadors. Ernest is asking a question, but I'd ask you, Brian, when you have time to respond to that on the chat. I don't know if anyone else has an opinion around what else they think, something that has been left out by Brian around influencer, ambassador, advocates. No?
But let me chime in, because I think all those titles, eventually they're all just gonna merge into one thing, yeah? So I'm not really big on the titles or the semantics. I think I'm more interested in how you define what this person is. And for me, there are three things we look at when we want to get into partnership. Will this influencer provide a unique value to the audiences? And I say that because I think from some time back, Alice said an influencer should be able to do something that the brand cannot do on its own. So for example, I worked on Coke Studio many years ago, Coke Studio Africa, and we brought on board influencers who are actually music producers, artists, etc., DJs. And the reason why we brought on these influencers is because the brand Coke had no authority to really talk about music, and music in that sense, what Coke Studio is trying to do. Remember Coke Studio is all around discovery of artists all over Africa. But those music producers from all over Africa, or those DJs or those artists, had the authority. So they provided a unique value to the audiences. And then secondly, is the influencer able to engage the audience about a passion that they have? So it could be music, food, travel, whatever. Okay, so I think that's more simplistic. But then finally, the key thing is around, are they portraying an authentic image of of the work they're doing? And I think that's really important. At EABL, we actually ask our influencers to have full disclosure that they are working for the brand. So I don't know if you guys have seen that, but they are required to disclose hashtag paid partnership, or if it's content we give them, they have to tag it as hashtag ad. And that's important, yeah? The disclosure is important, but I think it also adds to the authenticity. So if at ABL, we also have what we call internal influencers, employees like myself or our agency partners. Everybody in KBL knows Waidera is a gin, loves gin. So if I start posting about another brand, they'll be like, is she really being authentic? Yeah. So I think those are the three qualities we look at from an influencer point of view. The unique value they're bringing, are they able to engage on a passion point? And are they portraying an authentic image? And then you can call them whatever they are, influencers, brand ambassadors, I don't care.
Yeah. There's an interesting question I want to pick up from Winnie here. Maybe Brian, you could answer it around what's the future of that, whatever we'll call it, partnerships, influencers, whatever we are calling it. What's the future? Do you think, how relevant will it be in this new world we are in, and also in future?
I don't think influencers are going away anytime soon. Yesterday, there was a feature on Al Jazeera that was talking about virtual influencers, and I was equally shocked just watching it, where these guys are creating virtual influencers. It's just CGI, and if you go to the Instagram pages for some of these, I want to call them bots because they do look like actual people. They have millions of followers, and if you put aside the ethics of it, where these things have been designed to actually influence you based on the data that they have on your behavior when you're online, you look at it from a point of content creation, because I think that's where we're heading. And content is key, and especially when, as Odera said, as brands, there are conversations that we can't have, and that's why we lend ourselves to influencer platforms, because influencers have distinct audiences that they speak to. So even for us, as we try and select the different influencers, we always need to ask ourselves whether these guys, do they share the brand DNA, the value that we have as a brand? If they don't, then it's not the right fit. And some of the things that we need to look at is even from a risk perspective or a crisis management perspective is what type of content are these guys associated with? Are they politically aligned? Are they very, I would say, open about uh, their political views and some societal issues? Because then that has an effect on maybe the values of the brand. So research is going to be very, very important when it comes to selecting influencers. But in terms of the way the industry is going, I would still say long-term relationships between brands and influencers are going to be the right fit. And I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm a bank and I look at an influencer who's just had a baby, for example, I can start a relationship there and start saying, start saving for this child's education. As they grow older, let's start talking about insurance, then saving for college, then investing in some securities or maybe a mortgage. So if I look at the length of life for that influencer and the relationship they've had with the bank, then that authenticity is there. So I think that's the future.
Yeah, great points, Brian. Something that I'm thinking about is the more you're talking is I think we have equated the whole an influencer role to the following that you have on social media. Is that still the understanding of who a social, what makes an influencer? Is that still your understanding that it needs to be somebody with, I don't want to call it social capital, but some social media following?
To some degree, because if you look at influences and how they're segmented, it's more or less like a cone where at the very top you have your guys with millions of followers, and at the bottom is the engagement rate. The guys with I would call them nano micro influencers. These guys may not have the reach, but they have a lot of engagement. So I think even sometimes it's a matter of what's the objective of your campaign, for example. Then in terms of even the platforms, because lately we found ourselves looking at influencers from a different lens, from platform perspective. If you look at Facebook, Facebook has its own crop of influencers, which I'm learning about, where back in the day, we just used to look at Twitter in terms of influencing. But sometimes when you're looking at campaigns that have a regional reach, for example, if you're working with Kenya Power, for example, the power generating company that has, in terms of the reach and the scope of communication, it's countrywide. Why not go for influencers that are also radio presenters, local radio presenters from a regional perspective? Because guys in the regions, they listen to these voices every single day in the morning. So, and these guys are also on Facebook. So it's an extension between mainstream and mainstream radio and online, where I hear you talking about something in the morning on your radio show, then if I'm on Facebook with my low-end smartphone, I can still see you there. So I think it's a mixture of both and what your objectives are.
Yeah, awesome. Great point. Waidera, I just want to take this question from Mercy. She says, where does influencer marketing fit on the marketing funnel for EABL? Is it at top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel? And how do you track sales? That's, wow, Mercy.
Yeah,
that's a powered question.
It is. And I think, so there's awareness, conversion, consideration, and conversion. I think right now, a lot of the work we do with influencers is around awareness. But we also know that there is a correlation between awareness and business objectives. So we're not just doing awareness. We're not trying to reach people because we think it's a good thing to do. We do it for an objective. So we know reach, recency, and impact drive salience. Salience is your top of mind awareness. Top of mind awareness helps you drive your sales. Now we might not have a direct way to measure saying influencer X did this, so we sold 2 bottles of Johnny Walker. But also because we have a full marketing mix, a full media mix. We have influencers, we're still doing our above the line stuff, digital. And salience is also about even your physical availability. If we can raise awareness about this product, but if you go online or if you go to the store, you're out of stock, that affects your salience. So we look at everything. And then we, in EABL, we have a modeling tool called Marketing Catalyst that where we put our sales data in and then map out our media activity, and it's mapped out from out of home, TV, radio, digital, influencers, and we're able to actually measure our ROI. So it tells us which channels are most efficient and which ones are most effective. Now we've been doing this for 2 years, so now we have really good data that tells us, is this activity driving sales or not? And we've seen over the last year that digital, particularly social media and influence activity, does have a correlation. It has a positive ROI in terms of our sales. So based on that data, we decided, hey, if this is, and it's also very efficient from a cost point of view. So digital, I say in total, everything we're doing online, is 10 times cheaper than a salience point in TV. Now, we know TV also drives a lot of ROI for us. So if you look at the efficiency and effectiveness, then we're able to measure it and say, so you've seen, I don't know if in the last year we've doubled our investment in digital, and we've also increased our investment working with influencers to drive awareness. Now, I would love the day when I can have a direct correlation between sales and every single thing I'm doing. But I think this model right now works for us. It models it well enough for us to make decisions that we see actually are impactful. I hope that answers your question, Mercy.
Yeah, thanks for that, Waidera. I just want to switch gears for a minute and talk about something that excites me a lot, which is rebrands. We've seen a lot happening in the last quarter. Some a bit suspect in how they've put out their campaigns, and some quite interesting in the way that they've excited their audiences. And yeah, so there's a lot that we can talk about rebrands. But Matilda, I just want to bring you into the conversation, and I want to imagine and dream a little bit with you. So what's your favorite rebrand and what really stood out for you? And I'm going to pose that question to everybody. So just think about it as Matilda answers it. All-time favorite.
Oh, God. Top of my mind, I think it just came me back. When I joined the telecommunications industry, I joined Celtel then. That was, I think, 12 years ago. And I was part of the project team that rebranded Celtel then to Zain, a Pan-African brand. And I think for me, what stood out for me was the job that required to be done. It was an Arabic brand coming to the African market for the very first time. And I think for me, it was just the magical experience and the impact it created across the different countries. So I think for me, very early on in my career, to witness a Pan-African rebrand and to be right at the heart of it, that was very magical for me.
Oh, that's a beautiful one. I remember those days. Yeah. Telkom, Celsi, Zain. Yeah, it was an interesting journey. All right, I'll go to Paul. Your favorite rebrand? All right, I'm not sure. I think his internet has an issue, so I'll move to Brian, and then I'll come to you, Waidera.
I have to say ABSA, because it was very drastic, even in terms of the brand colors. It was like a complete 360. All of a sudden, you're coming from blue to red. So it was very interesting. Plus, the thematic was also very good.
So was it the shock factor from blue to red that stood out for you? That's awesome. Thanks, yeah. Paul. I think was it the color?
I think because most probably when you look at most rebrands, they never get away from the original. It's always something that has morphed off from the original, but this was drastic. So it was from blue to red. That was interesting. And both.
For sure. Yeah. And Paul, what stood out for you? Are there any rebrands that have just sparked and stayed in your mind?
Yeah. And I don't know whether it's a rebrand or it's the brand just evolving. But I think Betika has had quite an interesting change. And they've really moved away from the hardcore betting, so to speak, company, bet and win, to more raising awareness about social issues, being very quite emotional, and, touching, your heart, even if you're not a bettor. So I think that for me has been quite interesting, and they really stood out. I'll encourage everyone to just check out what's happening with Betika and see how the brand has quite evolved or rebranded itself in quotes.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of people are saying ABSA. Like everybody's talking about how ABSA we are Africanacity. I hope that's their tagline, because I love it. And I think they use it here as well in South Africa. So ABSA would be taking an award if we were awarding anybody tonight. I'm not being biased, but that's awesome. Most people are saying ABSA, really. I think they've done a great job in terms of just Africanizing, if I can use that term, their brand. So something that you've spoken about, Brian, and I want to pose this to Matilda, is the fact that there was a shock factor, and you've seen how brands evolve. But I'm just wondering, Matilda, and this is for you, I'm wondering, how can brands ensure that they're keeping their customers or their stakeholders as they grow or as they evolve? Because that's the one thing, you know, first you wake up to, oh my gosh, now they're blue. But have we taken, or they're, you know, the other way around, they're red, now they're blue, vice versa. Have we taken the customer through that journey, our key stakeholders, or how does that process happen? And do you think that brands are doing enough to ensure that their stakeholders are, you know, involved in the process of that, you know, rebrand or evolving?
Okay. Interesting question. So I think when you look at rebranding, I think there's somewhere I read where I think they were saying that it's about balancing who you are and where you actually want to be, right? So you have to balance the two. And rebrands are tricky, even for big brands, but if done well, they can be pretty rewarding. And I think the journey just starts from even the announcement. You don't want to hear it on the grapevine or read it on a blog. So it's how you tell the story to your internal stakeholders, get their buy-in, and then also tell the story to the external parties and why you're doing it. And the most important thing is what's in it for them. I think a lot of times people just say we are rebranding because say mergers and acquisition or to reposition the market, but you really don't take time to look at the people that you're talking to and what's in it for them. For the employees, what does that mean? If it's mergers and acquisition with a large organization, does that mean job losses? Does that mean access to better training opportunities? What does that mean for that consumer? When you look at small organizations, customers who are getting personalized services, does that disappear? So I think as we're telling the story of why we're rebranding and the final destination, it's important that we tell the stakeholders why we're rebranding it and the journey that is ahead of them. The other thing that I think is important to talk about is keep the message consistent. There's a lot of hype during rebranding period. There's a lot of change and evolution. And I think it's important that we stay grounded with our core values and the fundamentals that have gotten the business from where it was to where it is right now, right? Keep the channels of communication open to your consumers, to your stakeholders, your vendors and suppliers, right? And I think it's an entire ecosystem that needs to move together in unison to birth the new brand. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Before I take just the panel's view on that, I like what I believe it's Winnie in the comment section. She talked about Absa, and just going back to Absa, she says what made it, Winnie, Absa rebrand was a very bold one, quite risky, but that was on point. Now connects to the common Mwananchi, because that's the thing, right? They realized, oh wait, we were not quite owned by the people that we want to serve. So let's make it more Kenyan, if I want to call it that, or more African in how we message who we are and what we do. So an interesting South African example is there's a new airline that just launched, a domestic airline that launched a couple of months ago. So what they did was they had white paint on the craft itself, and they told people, okay, on social media, suggest what colors need to go on this. And there was an award to it. So people chose the colors. So they decided, oh, the tail needs to have black. And this is what we think, this is how the crew should dress. So these guys have chinos. They're the coolest airline. The airline staff wear chinos and black t-shirts, and they look so cool with their sneakers. I mean, that's amazing. That's a way of a brand, not necessarily rebranding, but introducing itself in the market in a way that makes consumers feel, wait, I was part of the process. And I think that the most special part is the design that they chose from the final candidates that met the match of what the marketing team wanted, got a name. So they'll get their names written on one of the Boeings, right, for the next 5 years. So, and they get to fly for free for 5 years. How amazing is that? Yeah, so I just want to find out if there's anyone who'd like to add on that point of just taking your customers or your stakeholders along in your rebranding journey.
Cool. Then we can go to the next sort of emerging issue. But I had something I noticed here in Kenya, Irene. So we do have a brand that they sell coffee. I'm not sure if I can even say their name, but there's this whole, so there's rebranding as we know it, in the sense of you're changing your logo, your color, you're getting a new look, you're changing your messaging, you're
sorry, Naomi, if you say their name, you become an influencer. So
so there's that, and then there's a small thing that comes to rebranding your coffee mug, yeah, and things that are sort of low budget, like you need, let's just call them facelifts to different things or products or assets or whatever we want to call it. And then, so my question is to whoever wants to take it, this issue of probably there's no budget for it, or the marketing brain behind it didn't think through, we're gonna have to pay for it. So there are this amazing idea of going to market and having creatives in the market to design the rebranded mug. My question to whoever has the courage to take it is, how do us as marketers sort of balance our budgets and our crazy, big, audacious ideas that we think are sticky? Is there a balance? Anyone with the courage to take that one?
I wouldn't say it's a balance. I would say one thing as marketers we need to remember is marketing is both an art and a science. So if we're not taking a data-driven approach to the decisions we're making, we're going to fall flat on our face. So I'll give you the example of one of our products, White Cap. We wanted to change the packaging. You know, it was in the old Euro bottle for many, many years. And there are these loyal White Cap drinkers. If you touch anything, they'll beat you up. And we felt it's time we refresh the look and feel. It's a facelift, really. New label, new bottle. But we didn't just decide to do it because somebody at ABL felt it's a nice thing to do. We did it because now, after going into research, and you don't have to spend millions on research. You can do focus groups. We have social media. Social media, I think, is a good place to get, those insights. So just test these things and use data to make your decisions. I'm a big believer in co-creation, especially in this day and age. And it's okay to go out and say, consumers, help me co-create for my brand. But then take the next step and test what has been created. Like in design thinking, you have prototypes developed, test them, and then you know which one is really going to have that sort of mass appeal. So that's my take on that. Yeah.
Okay. I'll shift gears and go into what I had alluded to around PR, good PR, bad PR, getting backlash, because we've seen that there are brands and people have gotten good responses and also backlash. And I want to direct this to you, Paul. So there's this notion that all PR is good PR. So how far is it when it comes to, for a brand, in terms of creating controversy? And I know you're sort of an expert in the PR industry. When does it become toxic? When does it become good for the brand?
Okay, so controversy. Controversy can be good for the brand, and it can also be bad for the brand. Why you want to be controversial and use something controversial is that you want to change the thinking. And when you change the thinking, it's, for example, maybe let's say a detergent company doing a campaign where a man is the lead and he's the one who's actually washing the clothes, because normally we see women washing the clothes in those ads and everything. So that sort of like flips the script and you think about it and like, oh yeah, by the way, they're actually men who do these house calls. And it creates controversy because then perhaps you're doing it in African society or even world over, and you know that or is taking care of the home. It's like positive controversy where you flip the script and then someone thinks and they're like, okay, I think this is different. Then this controversy where people question you and your brand for even having brought about that. I think people really try to say, negative PR is good PR. Well, you may be in the headlines for 1, 2, 3 weeks, but believe you me, your brand will have been dented, and people will keep on remembering what it is that you did that sort of like started controversy. So I will basically advise brands to keep away anything that revolves around religion, tribe, personal views, because then you basically don't want to throw your brand too far that you can't even save it. It's gone and it's gone and it's gone. So I think brands need to be very careful, especially when they're into those three. And then also a fourth one is also to do with politics. I think we're really in the African nation, we're really in a space whereby if you align yourself to a certain political brand, then you may close out other people, and that controversy that you're trying to bring about may actually work against you. So rule of thumb, controversy is good where you're flipping the script and where you're asking people to think different, but keep away from anything that has to do with religion and tribal issues, nationalities, etc. Yeah, over to you, Naomi.
Yeah, I like that, and I like the useful tips. I want to throw this to Paul and Matilda. So still around this issue of controversy and PR, with the best of intentions, sometimes some campaigns just go south, they just doesn't stick. And there's market backlash. We know how crude Kenyans on Twitter can be. Some members are here. We see them. So how can brands bounce back from a bad campaign? You had this thing, you thought, hey, this social media post I've put, it's the one, this one is, and then it just backfires on you. So how can brands sort of come back from a bad campaign?
Okay, so 3 things I think that they can do. First of all, once your brand is out there for positive, negative, but mostly for negative reasons, whereby you now have to go back and explain something instead of focusing on your marketing campaign, I think you first of all need to apologize. Say sorry, we got it wrong. We didn't think it will come out like this, blah, blah, blah. But then number 2, explain place. So yeah, they saying sorry, but then people say, okay, so how did this come about? So the second step is just basically to explain how you came about what it is that you did. And then thirdly, explain what you're going to do to correct that in the short term and in the long term. So there's an opportunity for brands, even where you make a mistake and you had all your good intentions planned out, but then the market did not receive it as positively as you had thought. But there's a good, it's a good time to basically explain yourself, and you need to do it fast. Don't wait for such a long time that people even forget. Then by the time you're explaining, even now there's even more backlash. Why did you take long, etc.? So you need to be really quick, since you're in the digital era, and people can start making up stories. So you need to correct it as fast as possible. So 3 things: apologize, explain how it is that you came about that decision or what you did, and then now also explain how you're going to correct that, both in the short term and in the long term.
Paul, I like your comments. You should just start a masterclass on marketing, like 3 things. I like that. Matilda, I want to ask you the same question, but also bring out, so it's 2 questions in one. One, I want to ask a question that Grace has asked. It was a really good question, if I can find it. It's actually an opinion. What are your opinions? She's saying that, would it be safe to say that for Kenyan brands, they fear controversy and they just don't touch that space at all, and they play it safe. So our content is not as creative as it should be. Do you think that's true? And what are your opinions on when things backfire, if they do?
I hope I remember all the 3 of them. So the first one was brands are scared of controversy. Nobody wants controversy. Even you as a person, you wouldn't want to be trending on Twitter, right? So are brands wary of controversy? I think it goes back to, something that we discussed when we talk about morality marketing. And I think for me, the biggest point is that brands have the power to make society changes, right? and we can use the brands which we lead, right, to make the changes that we want in the society. I think we've been afraid for a very long time, and I think we need to be bold, take a stand, right, and drive the society agenda that we want to drive and enforce in the country and the societies that I think we exist in. So that's my view on controversial campaigns. And the other question was on
so what you've talked, there's two questions. What do people do? And also, do you think that in Kenya we are afraid of controversy? And what should people do if it backfires?
Yes, I've said, yeah, we are scared of controversies, right? And I think it's time that we are bold to stand for what we believe in and the values. And what would happen if, to bounce back, I think Paul really answered that question very well. And I think I'd just reiterate the same thing, right? It's important for you as a business to take a seat back and understand what were we trying to do with the campaign, right? Clearly, you didn't achieve what you were trying to do. What can you do differently to remedy the situation, right? So first, you've got to apologize. Yeah. I'm happy we're living in a digital era where no matter how much you goof up, right, the trend will change in a couple of days. The damage might be big, right? But you can always redeem yourself. So always go back, try and figure out what you're trying to do, remedy the situation, apologize, and then redeem yourself, right, to your stakeholders, to your customers. And I think I'm happy we live in a digital era where I think in a couple of days you can be able to redeem yourself as a brand.
Wow. I hope we don't have to generate controversy for the sake of generating controversy, but we're actually standing for something. Guys, it's been fantastic, phenomenal to have you guys here and chatting to Naomi and I. But before I let you go, I just want to get your final thoughts on where we stand, as marketers. What can we look out for in this quarter? And then just parting shots, don't make it long. I'm going to give you less than a minute, like 50 seconds, just go for it. I'll start with you, Brian. What can people look out for? What's exciting? What's coming up?
I think in Kenya, for example, we've just come from 2 months of lockdown, and the first quarter was a way in which brands were trying to recover. Then all of a sudden, 2 more months of lockdown. But I think in the second quarter, you will see a lot more marketing campaigns come up, because I think we still have to recover the rest of the year. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for keeping it short and sweet. I'll go to you, Idera.
So I think for us at ABL, it's continuing to champion responsible marketing. And for us, responsible marketing is our way of making sure that our brands are in brand safe spaces. And I say this because we market alcohol. Alcohol is not a normal product. So we have to be very careful to make sure our brands are in suitable spaces, avoid proximity to controversial topics or content, inappropriate content. And that is why you see what we did, last in March. So continue to drive that agenda. We work with a lot of media partners, with a lot of agencies. We are guided by our Diageo marketing code. It's not that we don't want to be bold, but we have to be, it's like our own self-regulation. And it doesn't mean that, like I talked to a lot of our creatives internally and with our agencies, I'm not saying don't do that crazy idea, but do it knowing that what our overall ambition is. We want to be the best performing, most trusted, most respected consumer products company in the world. We can't do that by not operating with integrity in non-safe spaces, that kind of stuff. So that's I think what our focus you'll see us doing or continuing to do. We're not perfect at it. We'll continue to do it. And my final this is my public service PSA is, please, we continue to promote positive drinking experiences. Guys, I know we've just opened. Let's just be really responsible about how we're doing how we're engaging with our brands. We want to see you guys for a long time. So
thanks for that PSA, Waidera. And Matilda, before I go to Paul.
I think it's a call to us marketers to really just be more agile and be bold. Consumers are changing, right? And they're demanding more from us to be more human, to be more authentic, right? Yeah. And I think that's a big call to us as brands to actually be more agile and deliver to the consumers.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Paul, your closing remarks?
Thank you, everyone, for joining in to the marketers pushing us in Uganda and in East Africa. Just to, number one, take care of what's happening within the society. Be very conscious and aware of what the community and what people think and say. Do your research before you do your campaigns, and then always take it through the PR guys, especially where you do not involve in your campaigns. Just say, speak to them and say, you know what, we think of doing this as a campaign. What do you think of it? Let them give you some honest feedback about whether it's going to be a hit or a miss. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Involve people along. It's been a pleasure for Naomi and I to host this, and we hope we get opportunities to interact with you. Thanks everybody for being so awesome on the chat. To our panel, Paul, Brian, Matilda, Waidera, you guys were fantastic, and thank you for sharing such gems. We really appreciate it. And in ending, in case you're wondering where you can find Naomi and I know I'm sounding like another YouTube channel that you probably listened to, but Naomi and I have conversations with trailblazers from across the continent who are doing great things in business. So if you want to find out where you can catch us, please, we've got a channel on YouTube. It's called Africa Thrive Live, where we speak to people like you who are doing great things. And you can also catch us on LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Victor, for the invitation, and let's do it again.
Thank you.
So this is where I say back to you, Victor. All right, it looks like Victor, I'm about to close your house. I'm about to close the door of your house. Go ahead, Victor.
Thanks, Irene, and the rest of the panelists. Oh, we had quite a full house. I think we had over 130. We also have people on YouTube as well. So in case you joined this session late, you can just head over to our YouTube channel. You are streaming the session. You'll be able to find the bits that you might have missed. So I just want to thank you guys for joining us today. This was the first event. Like I said, I like the participation. I see we even had participation all the way from the UK. Hi, Andrea. Thanks for joining us. I've seen people from Uganda, from Zim, from South Africa. So really, I think what COVID has shown us right now is that there are no borders. The issues affecting marketers seem to be the same across the countries. So let this be the first of many. Be on the lookout for the next session that we'll be having. And this has been a very enjoyable session. So I hope to see you at the next event that we'll be having. That's all. Thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you, Victor.